What if I told you that plagues have killed more people than all wars in history combined? From a disease that nearly ended the Byzantine Empire to one we're still fighting today. These are the 10 pandemics that rewrote human history. For thousands of years, pathogens have been humanity's most relentless enemy. They've toppled empires, changed how we build cities, and even accelerated medical breakthroughs. Today, we're counting down the worst of them all, starting with one you might never have heard of. Our first entry struck when the world was at its most powerful and brought it to its knees. 1. The Antonine Plague, 165 to 180 CE. The Antonine Plague, also known as the Plague of Galen, was a devastating, ancient pandemic, likely smallpox or measles, that ravaged the Roman Empire during Marcus Aurelius's reign. It spread via returning soldiers, killing up to 5 million people, 25% mortality in some areas, significantly weakening Rome's military, economy, and population. Time period, 165 to 180 CE, with a second outbreak in 251 to 266 CE. Symptoms. As described by Galen, these included fever, diarrhea, vomiting, a sore throat, and skin eruptions, pustules that often turned black. Orogea, believed to have originated in the East, possibly Han Dynasty, China, and spread to Rome through soldiers returning from the Seleucia campaign. Impact. It devastated the Roman army, caused massive labor shortages, and severely crippled the economy. The mortality rate is estimated to have reached 10% of the population, with up to 1/3 of residents dying in some areas. No effective cure or modern treatment, resulting in high mortality. Ancient Roman physicians, including Galen, relied on ineffective, supportive remedies like theriac, a spice, opium mix, smelling laurel leaves, and applying urine to. The outbreak subsided only as population immunity built up. 2. The Plague of Justinian, 541 to 549. With recurrences until 750, was the first major documented pandemic of bubonic plague caused by Yersinia pestis, which devastated the Byzantine Empire and Mediterranean basin, named for Emperor Justinian I. It caused massive mortality, up to 25 million deaths, and weakened the empire's economy and military. Origin and spread. The pandemic is believed to have originated in or near Egypt before spreading to the Byzantine capital of Constantinople and throughout the Mediterranean world, often transported by grain ships. Cause. It was caused by the bacterium Yersinia, the same pathogen responsible for the Black Death in the 14th century. The plague was likely transmitted to humans by fleas living on rats. Symptoms. According to contemporary accounts from historians like victims experienced fever, buboes, painful swelling in the groin, armpit, or behind the ears, and sometimes black, pustule-like blisters. Impact on the empire. Mortality. The plague killed roughly 20 to 40% of the population of Constantinople and a significant portion of the population across the Eastern Roman Empire. Military and economy. The heavy loss of life led to a shortage of soldiers for the army and farmers for agricultural production, hampering Justinian's attempts to reconquer the Western Roman provinces. Social disruption. The pandemic caused severe economic disruption, prompting the government to increase taxes on the remaining population. Duration. While the initial outbreak was between 541 and 549, the plague returned in multiple waves for over 2 centuries, with significant outbreaks occurring until approximately 750 CE. Significance. It is considered one of the deadliest pandemics in human history and played a significant role in changing the social, economic, and political landscape of the Mediterranean world. The Plague of Justinian, beginning 541 AD, caused by Yersinia pestis, lacked effective modern medicine, resulting in 60 to 80% mortality. Treatments were based on ancient humoral theory, including bloodletting, lancing buboes, applying herbal poultices, and using magic amulets. Cold baths, or drugs like alkaloids. 3. The Black Death, 30 and 46, to 1353. The Black Death was a devastating global pandemic of bubonic plague that struck Asia, North Africa, and Europe between 1347 and 1351, killing an estimated 25 to 50 million people. It wiped out roughly 1/3 to 1/2 of Europe's population, caused by the bacterium Yersinia pestis spread by fleas on rodents. While both the Justinian Plague 541 to 750s CE and the Black Death 1347 to 1351 were caused by the same bacterium, Yersinia pestis, they were set apart by distinct genetic strains, different geopolitical impacts, and the specific, localized nature of the first pandemic. The Justinian Plague was the first recorded outbreak of the plague, hitting the Byzantine Empire, while the Black Death is the more famous, widespread, and devastating second pandemic that decimated Europe and altered its social structure, causes, and transmission. The disease was caused by Yersinia pestis, which lived in fleas that traveled on black rats. It was transmitted to humans through flea bites or, in its pneumonic form, through the air. Symptoms. Victims experienced high fever, vomiting blood, and the rapid development of painful, black, swollen lymph nodes, buboes in the groin or armpits, often leading to death within 2 to 7 days. Origin and spread. Originating in Central Asia, the plague arrived in Europe via trading ships at Sicilian ports in 1347. Impact. The massive death toll caused profound social, religious, and economic upheavals, leading to labor shortages that eventually improved the lives of surviving peasants. Historical treatments. 14th century. During the 1300s, treatments were based on misconceptions and superstition, as the cause of the disease was unknown. Bloodletting. Using leeches to remove bad blood. Herbal remedies. Applying strange pastes, such as chopped up snakes or pigeons, to sanitation methods. Burning incense, bathing in vinegar, or sitting near sewer pipes to combat bad air. Spiritual measures. Flagellation, whipping oneself, and prayers. Quarantine. The concept of isolating individuals for 40 days. Quarantine was developed during this period. 4 Kokolitsli epidemics, 1545 to 1576. The Kokolitsli epidemics 1545 to 1576 were catastrophic, mysterious outbreaks of high fever hemorrhagic disease in 16th century Mexico, New Spain, that killed roughly 50 to 80% of the indigenous population, meaning pestilence in Nahuatl. It caused rapid death with symptoms like jaundice, bleeding, and delirium. Recent DNA evidence suggests a salmonella strain. Definition: derived from the Nahuatl word for disease, illness, or plague. The Kokolitsli was referred to as the Great Sickness or the Great Plague. It is sometimes distinguished from Metlazahuatl, a less severe typhus-like illness. Epidemic peaks. 2 major outbreaks occurred, first in 1545 to 1548, killing approximately 80% of the population, and again in 1576 to 1580, killing another, approximately 50% of survivors. Symptoms. According to ScienceDirect.com and this article from Science.org, victims suffered from high fever, intense headache, vertigo, severe abdominal pain, black tongue, dark urine, and bleeding from the ears, nose, and mouth. Cause. While originally mysterious, DNA analysis of skeletons from a 1545 to 1550 cemetery in Oaxaca suggests that Salmonella enterica, specifically Paratifici, a enteric fever bacterium, was a major, if not the primary, cause. It was likely introduced by Europeans and worsened by severe drought, malnutrition, and crowded conditions. Impact. The epidemics were a major factor in the collapse of the indigenous population, with 5 to 15 million deaths, significantly weakening Aztec society. No effective remedy was found for the Coca-Litzli epidemic 1545 to 1576, which killed 5 to 15 million people in Mexico. Spanish treatments, such as bloodletting, worsened conditions, and most indigenous people lacked proper care. Survival depended on better nourishment and living conditions, which only the wealthy could afford, or living in specific, warmer areas. 5. Smallpox, approximately 1145 to 1070 BCE, 1959 to 1980. Global eradication effort. Smallpox was a highly contagious and frequently fatal disease caused by the variola virus, characterized by high fever and a distinct, progressive skin rash that left deep scars. Declared eradicated in 1980, it was one of history's deadliest diseases, killing roughly 30% of infected individuals. It was eliminated worldwide through a successful vaccine campaign. Cause: the variola virus, which spreads via direct contact or infected bodily fluids. Symptoms: initial, sudden, high fever, malaise, headache, and backache, followed by a rash that starts in the mouth, spreads to the face and body, turning into transmission. Highly contagious. Spread from person to person through saliva droplets, coughing, sneezing, or contact with contaminated clothing or bedding. Concern: because it has been eradicated, most people are not immune, leading to concerns about its potential use in bioterrorism. Eradication. The disease was officially declared eradicated by the World Health Organization, with the last natural case occurring in 1977. Treatment and prevention. There is no cure, it is prevented through vaccination. 6. Third cholera pandemic 1846 to 1860. The third cholera pandemic, roughly 1846 to 1860, was a devastating global waterborne outbreak of Vibrio cholerae that originated in India and killed over 1 million people worldwide, particularly in Russia and Great Britain. It is regarded as the most lethal of the 19th century cholera outbreaks, which led John Snow to identify contaminated water as the source of transmission in 1854. Highest fatality. It caused massive mortality, including over 1 million deaths in the Russian Empire and 23,000 in Great Britain in 1854 alone. Impact. The pandemic caused severe socioeconomic disruption and prompted improvements in sanitation and public health. Treatments used during the 1850s pandemic era generally focused on managing symptoms and included astringents and opiates, used to attempt to stop the massive fluid loss from diarrhea. Calomel. Mercury chloride, frequently administered as a purgative, though it was ineffective and toxic. Bloodletting. Though falling out of favor by this pandemic, this was sometimes still practiced early on, which often weakened patients further. Warmth and comfort. External heat application to combat the cold skin and cramping associated with severe dehydration. Hydration early. Primitive attempts at rehydration were sometimes made, but they were generally not systematic. As the concept of intravenous fluids ringers, lactate was not yet fully developed for mass use. Modern perspective on historic treatment. In contrast to the 1850s, modern prompt rehydration or intravenous fluids and appropriate antibiotics reduced the mortality rate of cholera to less than 1%. 7. Third plague pandemic 1855 to 1960. The third plague pandemic 1855 to 1959 was a major global outbreak of bubonic plague that began in Yunnan, China, killing over 15 million people worldwide, primarily in India and China. It was the first plague to reach all 5 inhabited continents, largely spread via maritime shipping routes, and led to the identification of the bacterium Yersinia. Cause. The pandemic was caused by the bacterium Yersinia, which was identified in 1894 by Alexander Yersin in Hong Kong. Transmission. It was largely spread by fleas carried by rats on steamships, which allowed it to reach global ports. Impact. Over 10 million people died in British Raj, India alone. Major outbreaks occurred in Hong Kong 1894, Bombay 1896, Sydney 1900. Cape Town, 1901, and San Francisco, 1900. The third plague pandemic starting mid-19th century was primarily cured and treated using modern antibiotics, with streptomycin, tetracycline, chloramphenicol, and gentamicin being the most effective. Early diagnosis and prompt, often administration of these antibiotics within 24 hours of symptom onset are crucial for survival. 8. The Spanish flu, 1918 to 1920. The 1918 Spanish flu was a devastatingly severe H1N1 influenza pandemic that infected roughly 500 million people, one-third of the world's population between 1918 and 1920. It caused an estimated 50 million deaths worldwide, with 675,000 in the US, making it one of the deadliest pandemics in history. Origin and name. Despite the name, it did not originate in Spain. It likely began in early 1980, possibly in Kansas, USA, or in military camps in France, but was named Spanish because Spain was neutral during WWI and did not censor news of the outbreak. Deadly waves. The pandemic occurred in 3 waves, with the second wave in the fall of 1918 being the most fatal. High mortality in young adults. Unlike typical flu viruses that threatened the very young and old, the 1918 strain caused high mortality in healthy adults aged 20 to 40. Symptoms and impact. Victims suffered from extreme fever, pneumonia, and severe respiratory distress, with some dying within hours or days. Due to the lack of vaccines or antibiotics to treat secondary infections, prevention relied on isolation, quarantine, and hygiene. There was no known effective cure for the 1918 Spanish flu at the time of the pandemic. Treatment was limited to supportive care, rest, hydration, and unconventional remedies. Today, modern antivirals like Tamiflu oseltamivir are expected to be effective, as are modern vaccines, antibiotics for secondary infections, and ICU care. Open-air treatment. Some success was reported using open-air hospitals where patients received fresh air, sunlight, and better hygiene, which helped reduce bacterial infections. 9. HIV/AIDS pandemic 1981, present. The HIV/AIDS pandemic, ongoing since 1981, has killed over 44 million people, with approximately 40.8 million people living with HIV in 2024. While global AIDS-related deaths have fallen by 70% since 2004 due to antiretroviral therapy, it remains a major public health issue, particularly in Africa, and with rapidly rising rates in the Philippines. Global HIV/AIDS status 2024 to 2025. Cases. Roughly 40.8 million people are living with HIV, with 1.3 million new infections in 2024. Deaths. In 2024, approximately 630,000 people died from AIDS-related illnesses. Treatment. 31.6 million. People were accessing ART by 2024, which allows infected individuals to live long lives and prevents transmission. Regional impact. The WHO. African region is most heavily affected, accounting for over 65% of all people living with HIV. The Philippines, experiencing the fastest growing epidemic in the Asia-Pacific region, with a 550% increase in cases between 2010 and 2024, primarily affecting young people. Transmission. Primarily spread through unprotected sex, sharing needles, or from mother to child. Management. HIV is now considered a manageable chronic condition, not a death sentence, due to effective ART. Usage examples and components of HIV/AIDS treatment. Daily pills. Most ART regimens involve a single, once-daily combination pill, for example, dolutegravir or bictegravir-based regimens, long-acting injections. For some individual syncytial medicines, like cabotegravir and rilpivirine, every 1 to 2 months in a clinic are available, often used for those already suppressed on oral therapy. Prevention of opportunistic infections. In advanced cases, antibiotics or other medications are used to prevent infections like TB or pneumonia. Post-exposure prophylaxis, PEP, HIV. Medicine taken within 72 hours of exposure to prevent infection. Pre-exposure prophylaxis PrEP. Daily medicine taken by high-risk HIV-negative individuals to prevent contracting the virus. Key aspects of treatment. Goal: undetectable equals untransmissible. U equals U. Reaching an undetectable viral load means the virus cannot be transmitted to sexual partners. Adherence: taking medications exactly as prescribed is critical to prevent the virus from developing. Resistance: timing. Treatment should start as soon as possible after diagnosis. 10. COVID-19 pandemic 2019 to 2023. The coronavirus disease 2019 COVID-19 pandemic is a global outbreak of coronavirus, an infectious disease caused by the severe acute respiratory syndrome coronavirus. 2. SARS-CoV-2. Symptoms of COVID-19. Symptoms include fever, sore throat, headache, tiredness, fatigue, body aches, chills, stuffy or runny nose, cough, shortness of breath, loss of oral or sense of smell and taste, difficulty thinking and focusing, brain fog, digestive symptoms like diarrhea, nausea, and vomiting. Some people have no symptoms but can still spread the virus. Complications of COVID. COVID can cause serious complications even if you don't feel very sick. These include pneumonia, acute respiratory distress syndrome, RADs, blood clots, including pulmonary embolism, PEI, or deep vein thrombosis, DVT, heart inflammation, myocarditis, pericarditis, cardiac arrest, multi-system inflammatory syndrome. In children, MIS-C, a condition where pain, extreme fatigue, and other symptoms last for months or years after a COVID infection. From the Byzantine Empire to your living room. These pandemics didn't just kill people. They built our public health systems, drove innovation in medicine, and taught us that humanity's greatest strength is how we respond when we're tested. Some are gone forever, others we're still fighting. But one thing is clear: pathogens will keep evolving, and so must we. So here's my question for you. Which of these pandemics surprised you the most? Drop it in the comments below, and if you want to see how we're preparing for the NEXT global threat, hit subscribe and ring the bell so you don't miss it. Thanks for watching, and stay safe out there.